Hey everybody, welcome to Always Good News. My name is Mark Miller and really glad you're here. I know there's a ton of things you could be watching right now. I want to encourage you to stay right here because the conversation we're going to have I think is going to be super encouraging for you. And like we always say, we want to know where you're watching from. So if you're in Canada, let us know the city and province that you're watching from. If you're in a different part of the world, let us know. What country or wherever you're watching from, let us know, and we'd love to hear from you. I'm excited to have this conversation tonight. Somebody that I've got a lot of respect for is doing some great work, and we're going to hear all about it. So good to see so many of you guys joining tonight. Welcome. Our guest tonight's a friend of the Billy Graham Association. He's spoken at our chapel in Calgary, and he's also been a guest speaker at some of our events, and so we are really excited to have him with us tonight. Welcome to everybody, and we'll just wait for our guest to join us tonight. Hey, Dave Sawler, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing awesome.
So good to see you, man. Welcome.
I saw it last week. I watched one of your videos and saw your background, and so I thought I better come down here so I have something quite as fancy behind me. I'll be with you tonight.
Now, rumor has it you were just at the skate park.
I just got back like 10 minutes ago. I just out with a couple of our local hooligans here in Cape Breton.
Well, I'm glad you took time out to come and hang out with us. Hey, listen, Dave, before we get started, we like to do a little this or that just so everybody gets to know a little bit about you and some of the stuff you like or dislike and what you would choose. So we're going to start on now we've got people from all over the world. I just saw West Virginia and other countries, including the US, but we're going to start with a super Canadian question. All right, here we go. Donair or poutine?
Donair.
Good East Coast boy. I love it. Netflix or Amazon Prime?
I'm still on Netflix, but I may switch.
Okay. Here's a summer related question. This one is pretty stressful to me at the moment, so I got to get your opinion on it. Dandelions, weed or flower?
They bother me, so I'm going with weed.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, indoors, outdoors?
Outdoors.
Soft pillow, firm pillow?
Soft pillow.
All right, last one. Swimming, ocean or pool?
Ocean.
Okay, yep. East Coast again, right? You got to go with it.
I was on the ocean today, and let me tell you, I am not swimming yet. It is, oh my goodness, incredible.
It is too cold for that foolishness.
Yeah.
Well, man, so good to have you. And why don't you just a lot of people know who you are. You do a lot of speaking around our country for sure. But some people that are watching might not know who Dave Sawler is. Why don't you tell us just briefly about you, your ministry, family, where you live, what you're up to?
Yeah, so I live in the East Coast of Canada. I'm pretty much as far east as you can go without going to Newfoundland. So I live right on the water. And we moved here 15 years ago to start a church planting ministry. So I'm actually in one of the first churches that we started. And this is like our church and our youth center that I'm in right now.
Okay.
And but the last couple of years, I spent about 10 years to just writing and just teaching on a lot of issues around what youth and young adult retention in the church. So that's probably more known for traveling, like speaking on those topics.
Right.
But on several youth centers, and our main ministry, I would say, is engaging the completely unchurched, and that's why we're in Cape Breton in the first place, just to bless this area. But our primary ministry is to those that would have never set foot in a church building before.
Yeah. Okay. So 15 years in Cape Breton.
Yeah.
Why Cape Breton? How did that happen?
Well, I lived here for a while when I was young.
Okay.
And I think almost 25 years ago, I used to, when I was youth pastoring in other areas of Canada, I used to bring mission teams here. Like we'd come for a weekend or a week. And I remember some years we were bringing 3 to 5 teams at, different areas of Cape Breton. And I think it was actually during that point, we said at some point, we actually need to go and not just visit, but we need to go and stay. Because every time we came here, we were meeting and connecting with so many people. But as far as we never knew how to connect them to a local church.
Yeah.
And so it seemed there was a big disconnect there. So we thought, and I feel like God really put it on our heart, like 25 years, and we waited like almost 10 years before we actually moved here. But it was kind of been this long-term dream about this is where God called us.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, so Cape Breton, of course, on the far east coast of Canada, not quite as far as Newfoundland, but
Yeah.
you can almost see it from there. Tell us about the climate there in terms of not the weather. We know it's pretty snowy most of the year, and then days like today get a little warmer. But just the spiritual climate, the socioeconomics, kind of what's the temperature like there in terms of churches and ministry, and also just some of the ministry stuff you're doing.
Yeah. Well, this, I think, led to us coming here, but also why we do some of the types of things that we do. I don't even tell people they should be doing exactly what we're doing somewhere else. I think when I talk about some of this, it's really based on our community.
Absolutely.
We do have some of the highest child poverty rates here in Eastern Canada. We have like Escazoni, for example, 75% of the kids live below the poverty line. In Glace Bay, where I'm sitting right now, it's just under 40%. I was just at, like, mentioned one of the skate parks in New Waterford, and it's, sitting under about 45%. But it also has led to us having some of the highest addiction rates. So many years ago, when Oxycontin actually became a huge issue in Canada, the Canadian government filmed a documentary on how devastating Oxycontin was, and it was actually filmed here in Glace Bay called Cottonland. Wow. And so we're in a spot now where we have literally hundreds and thousands of kids who are growing up in homes that at least one or both of their parents or guardians are addicts of some kind. And so we're in that this spot where super high poverty and also addiction. And at the same time, Cape Breton is like one of the friendliest places.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful places. And before moving here, everyone used to talk to me about how dark Cape Breton was. Just get prepared, how terrible it's going to be. And you know what? For a lot of people, I will say that's been their experience. I'm not downplaying that at all. But I think we stayed here 15 years because we never looked at it that way. Mm-hmm. I honestly think, like, we came here, and I just always thought if God's called us here, he's bigger than those things. And so I just always looked at it, instead of thinking, okay, this is super dark. Well, lots of places have incredible darkness, but we weren't called here to focus on the darkness. We were called here because we were here to bring hope in a dark place.
So good.
I mean, I just think we've spent the last 15 years talking about the opposite, that this is a terrible place, because I have absolutely incredible people here, and we are surrounded by opportunity. And I remember my first couple of years here, I don't think we ever did one event, one service, anything that I didn't get to share the gospel with at least one person who's never heard it before. Wow. Now, some people say, well, that's so dark because there's so many lost people. I'm like, no, this is like, if you want opportunity, you're surrounded. And so I just decided, like, we weren't going to look at it that way. And I think that's why we're still here, though, and still giving it, because we thought, it's got lots of problems, but it just means that every day you have opportunity.
That's so good, Dave. There's a verse and I want to talk about some of the stuff you're doing, some of the ministry stuff, because it's just, it's really inspiring and encouraging. And I know people, this is called Always Good News, and we want to talk about, there's so much doom and gloom, so much horrible things happening. We want to hear some good things that are happening, like you talked about. But, there's a verse in Proverbs 27 that says, let someone else praise you and not your own mouth. And I thought about that today. I thought, I'm really inspired by the work you do. And, it's really easy to get on social media and have an opinion, or to create a platform. And a lot of people want to talk about making a difference. And that can be easy. But I just have so much respect for you, for the good work that you're doing and the longevity that you've planted yourself in a community that is not super popular. I mean, there's not a lot of options there in terms of what you can do, or that kind of thing. But, and so, I've been just following you for a lot of years, and the good work you're doing. And I want to hear more about that. But a couple of weeks ago, the mayor of CBRM actually declared it Dave Sawler Day. Yeah. So obviously I'm not the only one that's, and I know you probably hate talking about this because this is not you, but they wanted to recognize the municipal government in the city that you're in, wanted to recognize the good work that you're doing. And I know it's changed a bit with this whole COVID-19 scenario, but you've got a church, So you have a church that meets. You've also got Undercurrent youth centers, and you're doing some stuff there with skate parks, and it's just crazy. Can you tell us a couple cool stories about the impact or some of the ministries you're running or how you're making an impact in these different ways?
Yeah, like with our youth centers, I don't know if people would think of just serving in this way. We decided we were going to do something for our community that was based on no agendas.
Yeah.
That we're just going to serve people with no strings attached. Not if they showed up to our church or anything. And that I think intrigued a lot of people and bothered some people too, because I wasn't stuff. But we basically moved into an area when we planted here. We didn't start with anyone. My wife and I just moved into a community hoping it would work out. And so the only way we were ever going to grow anything is if we met people who had no church background. And so we've said we're just going to become part of our community and serve our community in big ways. And we have just never stopped. So one of our biggest needs in our community was that there's literally, like some of what we just talked about with child poverty and not a lot of opportunity. And so basically we became a ministry. Like, we want to be a place where everyone who can't afford anything else has opportunity. And so we run about, well, pre-COVID, we were running about 20 different programs per week,
Unreal.
Youth between our centers. And so, and we ran with this mindset. We were never running like about, we're trying to figure out always, how do we run all this stuff for people who can't afford any of it? Mm-hmm. So I'm a constant fundraiser but that has led to some really interesting things, because we decided, now this may be unique to us, but right from the beginning, we thought, instead of like it being like a church and just serve our community, that we were going to serve the community with the community. And so I have our fancy background behind us, but on the other side of me is this whole room's filled with food right now. Mm-hmm. And it's not people from our church who are coming to us up. It's like the community. So we actually work with our community. And to me, that is the highlight to me, because anyone's ever been on a missions trip, for example, say even some people not that you don't normally hang out with, or maybe not from your church, you get to know them so well. I feel like for the last 15 years, because we decided we're going to serve our community with our community, that we've got to know everybody in our community. Yeah. And you know what? And through that, some of the people that would be everyone would think are the least likely to ever come to our church. We grew our youth ministry without any church kids. And it was because we just served our community and got to know people. Yeah. And youth ministry, like our church youth ministry, grew out of that just by serving. And talk about an open door. So I remember years ago showing up on, I could be here on a Monday night, and there'd be, there was a couple months we were running 100 at our junior high night on Monday nights, and it was just chaos. And that's what I was intrigued about. How on earth did you get all these kids coming who don't have to come? No one's making them come. Yeah. And always because we just served. And so we've got to witness like those things happen in front of our eyes, just because we've continued to serve without agenda. Yeah. But what's happened is we've gained trust in our community. And like with the mayor, we really have that with every level of government here. And it's because we've consistently just served without agenda. Yeah. And yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, serving, I mean, that's the message of Jesus, right? The towel.
Yeah.
And it opens those doors. It's so good.
This is one of the things that hit me even when COVID started. Was, something struck me the second weekend. I was in one of the endless Zoom meetings we've all been in, right? There with a group of youth workers, and everyone's talking about what they're doing and how, all their plans, and everyone was talking about how, they're streaming their Sunday school or their services or their Bible studies. And everyone I was in this call with didn't know this, but I had just finished a meeting. I'm on the Mental Health and Addictions Advisory Board for the Health Authority here. And we were talking about the abuse that's going on. Yeah. We were talking about the mental health issues and the incredible anxiety. And so I had just finished this meeting, and I'm in this other meeting, and everyone's talking about how they're streaming everything. which it, by the way, is important. We're streaming all those things too. But what hit me in the middle of that is like this crisis hit, and everyone's talking about how we're just doing things for ourselves. But surrounding us right at that moment is, especially for us in Cape Breton, what hit me the most is like we were already surrounded by poverty. Now we're surrounded in crisis poverty. Mm-hmm. We were already mental health issues, and it's like our biggest issues right now in our community are anxiety, boredom, abuse, kids who are in actually terrible homes right now. And I was like, I just can't offer, like, I'm going to stream something for us.
Yeah.
And not that those things aren't important. I don't mean to say that all, but I was like, we're surrounded by need. And I was like, this is actually right now, we are surrounded with even a greater opportunity and a need to be people who serve.
Yeah. Oh man, it's so good, Dave. So good. I know one of your focuses, one of your life kind of mottos is to challenge people to live like Jesus without, in your words, the clutter that's usually attached to that. What does that look like in Cape Breton?
Well, I just think there's so many things that I've spent a lot of time doing and wishing. I don't know if any of this has ever happened to anyone else, but I was like, I wish I could just stop everything else and I could just live out what I read in Scripture.
Yeah.
I don't know if I think maybe everyone faces that at some point. Like, man, if I wasn't doing this, like, what would it have been like to be walking with Jesus, be one of the disciples, and
sure, and
just walk that. You think about where some of the stories happen in the marketplace, or just walking down the road, or in someone's house, and it's almost like you long that, man, I wish I could just get there, but it's like, how do we do that when we got all the stuff that we do?
Right.
And I think it was just deciding to give some of that up. But it's what we're comfortable, it's what we know how to do. So it sounds really nice just to give it up, but it's actually really tough to give it up because who we are. And so I think the basics of it is just that you're actually spending time with people outside of your circle of, who's there on a Sunday. Yeah. And so been very intentional to do that. But one of the things that we did, I think, is maybe it's unique in how we operate here, is we have a building, and we decided that instead of thinking of it as a church building where all the Christians gather, that all of our space is going to be used to serve the community. That even if God's given us the space, that it's not just going to be for service. So I think every Christian or every church is always trying to figure out, like, we disciple our people and then we're going to send them out, and to reach their neighbors, or, whatever the plan is. And so we decided that it was going to look different. And so by serving our community, like, we still believe that you should go do all those things, but our community is actually here every day. Yeah. And so if you're wondering, how on earth am I ever going to have a connection with someone outside the church? Well, we decided if our space is going to be where our community is, like, our space is going to be the center of our community. And so if you want to just meet people in the community, you can just be here, and in a week meet hundreds of people in the community.
So good.
And so it's a different way of looking at what you have. But I think that's where our leaning is that we just get to spend time with people in our community every day. And so, but I really think it came down to, if God gave us the space, let's give it away.
That's so good. And I think, you read through the Gospels, Jesus was constantly, we're going to your house for supper.
Yes.
He was constantly in relationship at the skate park, maybe, but he wasn't just, join me on Sundays at 10 a.m. It was every day of the week in all of those different environments. So much so that it was the religious people that were getting upset, saying, hey, he's hanging out with those people again.
Yes.
Yeah. No, man, I love that. Hey, listen, if you're watching, you got a question for Dave, there is a question box in the bottom. Throw a couple at us, and if we got time, we'll dig into that. Dave, I want to ask you this, because you're doing incredible work. The government recognizes it. You have a voice. I know you've got a voice in this part of our country, especially in the work that you're doing. And it's, just when you start talking about, hundreds of kids at a youth group, just to give context to our viewers that are watching, I saw somebody from Guatemala and the US and all over. That's unheard of in small town Canada.
Yeah.
on a regular basis. And, you know, you're doing lunch programs and all of that stuff. But I know it's not always easy. How do you I know what motivates you, but how do you keep going? Like, what is the driving factor for this challenging work that just gets you out of bed every morning and keep, because it's obviously not every day is an easy day. It's not easy work when you're seeing kids suffering right here in Canada, you know, where they shouldn't be, and yet they are, in addictions and mental health issues and all of what comes with that. How do you keep going?
I think there's a few things that because I've thought about this, but I've been asked this question a bit, because since we moved here, there's been quite a few other people who've tried to plant in Cape Breton, and most of them didn't work. Like, and it's and a lot of people just talk about how dark it's been and all those things. And I don't know if we felt the same way, but there's something about perseverance in there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if stubbornness is a spiritual gift. You can say perseverance, but I don't know. It's just, I think God makes you who you are so you can be in the right place at the right time. So I think part of it. But I could never take away from that. At one point, my wife and I both felt so strong from a series of, you know, big God moments and everything else, that this is where God told us to go. And I think there's a compassion part in it too. I haven't told a lot of people this, like in a thing like this. My first 10 years here, I didn't do any funerals for anyone who died of old age. And everyone was either an overdose, an accident, you know, whether it be drugs or alcohol, murder, etc. And I didn't, and when I was sharing that with people, it's like, what the heck is going on in the community you live in? Yeah. But I do think somehow seeing the brokenness is also a motivator. I don't know if that makes sense, because God gave us the passion to go, but I always thought of this way, that there's so many stories in the Gospels, and it starts with Jesus full of compassion, and then, and so I realize some people say, no, it's the call. And so I recognize that it is the call, but when I read scripture, I also read this, that Jesus full of compassion, and tells a story. So I always thought, for each one of us, this is what I encourage everyone that we work with here, is to put yourself in that story. So David, full of compassion, and then what's my story going to be?
Oh, it's so good, Dave.
That's kind of, I think, those things. And then I think just having the faith that God can, like, if we didn't believe that God could turn this around, like, there's no use being here, you know what I mean? Or that it was hopeless, or surrounded by darkness and you couldn't overcome. And so a combination of all those things, that knowing that God told, like, I can think back to some very specific things where this is the time to go, and perseverance and compassion and just a lot of faith, I think.
Yeah, it's so good. You know, you said a couple times, you alluded to, and it is, because I've heard it, it's a dark place, and we hear that statement. And, you know, I was just thinking about you today in our conversation tonight, and this scripture in Matthew 5, you know, after the Beatitudes, and he says, you're the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp, put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. And I love this. Verse 16 says, in the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds. So I think, you know, that's what your mayor saw. He's seeing the good deeds, but it's the light of the gospel shining bright, and it shines brightest in the dark, right? And the Message version, I love the last part of that in the Message, says, keep open house. And I've tracked with you for a long time, and you've always got people with you. Like, I mean, I saw your Instagram a few days ago. You're at Walmart with like 9 carts of food, and you've got young adults that are just giving their lives away to this stuff. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven.
Yeah.
And I think you're living that, man.
Yeah. You know what? One of the simplest scriptures, like, I grew up attending charismatic churches like my whole life. So we were always like, if you want to reach into community, it's just going to be like the shock and awe, you know, type things. And I realized God does just move in incredible ways at times. And it's been alluded to, as we just mentioned, like, people talked about this being a dark place, and just simply doing this, overcome evil with good. And, you know, sometimes we think it's more complicated than that. No, just just stick with that. And even in this season, one of my favorite scriptures that I've been coming back to is in this time, like so much of what we normally do, we're not doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
So people, I think, well, what on earth are we supposed to do? Like, is there any direction in scripture about what we're supposed to be doing right now? Like, what can I do for God right at well, I can't do all the stuff I'm normally doing. Well, it's not actually hidden in scripture what you should be doing. If you want to do something for Jesus today, the answer is this: whatever you do for the least of them, you do for him.
Right.
And so it's like, to me, it's never been a hidden, like, what do we do when we can't do all our other stuff? Well, actually, say I love to serve Jesus, and I want to do that by like growing in my relationship with him. But if I really want to do something for him today, how would I do that? And well, that's going to the one who's the least.
Yeah.
And that's not hidden in scripture. Like, I think we're all trying to figure out what do we do right now. I was like, well, there's a clear direction on what to do at this moment.
Yeah, man, it's so good, Dave. I know I don't want to keep you much longer. We're going to wrap up here in a second. Can you tell people, I know we've got some people in the western part of our country that are watching, and they're cheering you on as well. Somebody, they're watching tonight, they want to make a difference. I think you just said it. Serve the least of these.
Yeah.
Anything else that you would tell somebody that's just wants to make their life count? Everything seems to be shaking right now. Everything people put their trust and their hope in and their identity in is kind of being ripped from us. And we're seeing what's really important. And yet people want to make their lives count. They want to make a difference. They want to make an impact. Anything you just encourage them with? Or?
Yeah, I think this right now is actually this may be a shakeup, but I don't think it's not necessarily a terrible shakeup, because if we look at it in a different way, you know what? The first 300 years of the church, we didn't have buildings and we didn't have stuff. And turns out those people did all right. The Bible said they turned the world upside down. In one sense, I'm not super stressed out about all of that. But there's this one story in scripture, and it's about the man with the withered hand. And of course, Jesus does something in this story he hasn't done in other spots, because sometimes you would heal someone and say, don't make a big scene, like just go, but this one day it actually says Jesus got him to stand in front of everybody. And here's all the things, like, here's a person who is broken, probably, could never go into all the spots in the temple, and because he's got something wrong with him, and he would have thought, God doesn't love me, or my parents did something wrong, like whatever, like here's the broken standing in front of Jesus. And there's all these people around wondering, like, this isn't the right day for this to happen. They're all upset about it. It's like, of course we should serve people, and here's this group of people coming up with every one of those reasons. But this day, Jesus stands this man in front of everybody. And this day, the broken become the center of the story. Wow. And Jesus stands him in front of everyone. And when I think about our Christian walk, like, or even what we are as churches, sometimes when we think of what's at the center, we think it's us. Like it's pastors, it's our boards, our council, whatever type of church we have. Think of all the people who pay tithes, and that's the center. And I just think this is a season when, maybe God's saying, actually, the center of my attention is the lost, the broken, those who need healing. And our communities right now are actually, the amount of people who are broken, who are anxious, who are hurting is actually growing. And I was like, right now and today, I actually think could be the church's greatest season if we take our eyes off ourselves and realize what God has put us here for. Because, sometimes we're trying to figure how on earth we're going to make, what are the needs in my community? The needs are actually quite obvious right now. And I think this is like this huge opportunity, and people can be very discouraged about, how can I live out my faith right now? But I think this is our moment to take the broken and put them at the center once again. Very good. So.
Oh man, that's very good. Dave, how can people connect with you? Some websites, some social medias. What's the best way they can connect with your ministry, what you're doing?
Actually, just look up Lighthouse of Cape Breton just on Facebook, or lighthousecb.com. Okay. If you look up Undercurrent Youth Centers, Basically, we'll get the message. If you send a message to any of those things, we're going to get them. But I actually encourage people to look up Undercurrent Youth Centers and Lighthouse of Cape Breton on, just Google it. You can Facebook it or just type it in and you'll get there. That's amazing. And listen, if you are watching as well and you want to do something, we've got opportunities at the Billy Graham Association. If you click the link in our bio there, we've got tons of people right now, more than ever, really engaging online and just looking for answers. You can be a discipleship coach or a chat coach online and have conversations. So there's lots we can be doing, like Dave said. Dave, it's been so good to connect with you, and just so proud of you and the work you're doing. It's super inspiring, and we're just so glad you could spend these few minutes with us. Well, thanks for having me tonight. I appreciate it. All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next week on Always Good News. Thanks, Dave. See you later. Good night.